Want more HFY stories? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.
Dr. Eris Thorne stood in the heart of the Galactic Archive, a cathedral of knowledge older than humanity itself. Towering shelves stretched into the void, each holding crystalline data stones containing the sum total of 1,000 civilizations. The air hummed with the silent resonance of stored history, a low thrum that vibrated in his bones. Eris wasn't here to admire the architecture. He was here to burn it all down. His research into the fundamental constants of the universe had hit a wall built by consensus. Every species that had come before had agreed on the laws of physics. They'd written them down, codified them, and stored them here for safekeeping. Eris suspected they were wrong. For months, he'd pored over the archives, cross-referencing quantum fluctuations with gravitational anomalies, and found inconsistencies. Tiny, almost imperceptible deviations that shouldn't exist. The archive's caretakers, the silent, robed figures known as the Keepers, had warned him. The laws are immutable, they'd said, their voices like wind through stone. To challenge them is to invite chaos. Eris had smiled. Chaos was his specialty. He'd brought a device of his own design, a handheld scanner that could read the raw, unfiltered data beneath the archive's polished surface. It wasn't elegant. It was jury-rigged from salvaged tech and spare parts, a testament to human ingenuity. As he activated it, the scanner whirred, its lens glowing with a faint blue light. It hovered over a data stone labeled "The Foundations of Reality." The stone's surface shimmered, then cracked, revealing not text, but a cascade of symbols that pulsed with a chaotic energy. Eris's breath caught. This wasn't history. This was a lie. The symbols coalesced into a pattern, a language no one had ever deciphered. It was older than the archive itself, predating the Keepers by millennia. Eris's fingers flew across a nearby console, translating the symbols into equations. The results were staggering. The speed of light wasn't constant. Gravity wasn't a force but a symptom. Time wasn't linear. The universe wasn't just governed by physics. It was shaped by belief. Or rather, by the absence of it. Every species that had risen to galactic prominence had imposed order on the chaos, creating a shared reality that stifled true potential. They'd become comfortable, predictable. And predictability, Eris now understood, was a vulnerability. The scanner suddenly shrieked, its blue light flaring into a blinding white. Eris stumbled back as the data stone exploded, sending shards of crystalline data flying. The archive's lights flickered, and the Keepers appeared, their robes swirling as if caught in an unseen wind. "You have accessed the forbidden archive," one said, its voice devoid of emotion. "What you have seen cannot be unseen." Eris glared at them, his heart pounding. Forbidden? Or just inconvenient? The Keepers exchanged a glance, a subtle shift in posture that spoke volumes. "The Ascendants are coming," another Keeper said. "They do not tolerate chaos. They do not tolerate you." Eris didn't know who the Ascendants were, but he knew he couldn't back down. He snatched a data shard from the floor, its surface still humming with raw energy. "Then let them come," he said, though the words felt hollow. The Keepers didn't move. They simply watched, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The archive had been breached, and Eris had just lit the fuse. Eris fled the archive, clutching the data shard like a lifeline. The streets of the archive's host planet, Xylos, were a labyrinth of towering spires and floating platforms, all bathed in the soft glow of twin suns. He'd never felt so alive, so terrified. The shard's energy pulsed against his palm, a reminder of the truth he'd uncovered. The Ascendants weren't just coming, they were already here. He could feel them, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He ducked into a crowded market, blending in with the diverse crowd of aliens, traders, and scholars. The data shard burned in his pocket, its energy growing more volatile with each passing second. He needed to understand it, to harness it before the Ascendants found him. He found a quiet alcove and pulled out a makeshift terminal, connecting the shard to a power source. The screen flickered to life, displaying not text, but a visual representation of the universe, a web of light and shadow, pulsing with an energy that defied logic. The Ascendants were the shadow, a creeping void that consumed all it touched. They were ancient biomechanical entities, organic and machine fused into a single, terrifying whole. They didn't conquer worlds. They assimilated them, erasing individuality and imposing their own rigid order. And they were hunting him. Because he was unpredictable. A notification flashed on the screen, Ascendant proximity alert. Eris's blood ran cold. He grabbed the shard and fled, not caring who he knocked over. The streets blurred past him as he raced toward his ship, a rust bucket freighter named the Wanderer. He'd bought it cheap, and it showed. But it was fast, and it was his only chance. As he reached the landing pad, he saw them. 3 Ascendants, towering over the crowd, their metallic limbs gleaming under the suns. They moved with unnatural grace, their organic parts pulsing with a sickly green light. The crowd scattered in terror. Eris didn't hesitate. He leaped into the Wanderer's cockpit, slammed the hatch shut, and fired the engines. The ship lurched upward as plasma bolts scorched the landing pad behind him. He was in the air, but he wasn't safe. The Ascendants were already in pursuit. The Wanderer shuddered as it broke atmosphere, the planet's twin suns blinding in the viewport. Eris gripped the controls, his knuckles white. The Ascendants were gaining, their sleek biomechanical ships cutting through the void like sharks. He needed a plan, but his mind was a whirlwind of equations and symbols. The data shard pulsed in his pocket, its energy resonating with the ship's systems. An idea sparked. If the Ascendants thrived on order, what if he gave them chaos? He rerouted the ship's power to the engines, pushing them beyond their limits. The ship groaned in protest, but it held. He then activated the shard, feeding its chaotic energy into the navigation system. The stars outside the viewport warped and twisted, bending into impossible shapes. The Ascendant's ships followed, their targeting systems flickering as they struggled to lock on. Eris laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. "You want predictability?" he muttered. "I'll give you the universe's worst headache." He executed a series of erratic maneuvers, diving through asteroid fields and skimming the surface of a gas giant. The Ascendants followed, their movements precise, methodical. They were out of their element. For the first time, Eris saw a flicker of something in their systems: confusion. They weren't used to this. They weren't used to him. One of the Ascendant ships fired, a bolt of green energy striking the Wanderer's wing. The ship spun out of control, alarms blaring. Eris fought the controls, his hands slick with sweat. The shard's energy flared, and suddenly, the stars outside resolved into a new pattern, a spiral that pulled the Ascendants toward it. It was a trap, and they'd walked right into it. The 2 remaining ships collided in a fiery explosion, their wreckage drifting silently in the void. Eris exhaled, slumping in his seat. He'd survived, but for how long? The Ascendants were relentless, and he'd just declared war. Eris limped the Wanderer into a hidden asteroid belt, its engines sputtering. The shard's energy had stabilized, but the ship was badly damaged. He needed time, resources, and answers. The archive had been his only source of knowledge, and now it was compromised. He needed a new ally, someone who understood the stakes. His mind went to Dr. Alara Voss, a disgraced astrophysicist who'd been exiled from her own people for suggesting similar theories. If anyone could help him, it was her. He patched a message through to her last known coordinates, a research station on the edge of known space. The reply came back almost instantly. Asterisk, "You're late, Eris. I've been waiting for this." Asterisk Alara was a woman in her 60s, her face a roadmap of wrinkles and defiance. She met him at the airlock, her eyes sharp as she took in the damage to his ship. "The Ascendants?" she asked, her voice steady. Eris nodded, handing her the data shard. "They're not just conquerors, Alara. They're erasers. They delete anything that doesn't fit their version of reality." Alara's fingers traced the shard's surface, her expression grim. "I knew it. The universal constants aren't constants. They're a cage." She led him into her lab, a chaotic mess of screens and machinery. "We need to weaponize this chaos. Not just for survival, but for freedom." Eris watched her work, a newfound respect growing in his chest. Alara wasn't just brilliant, she was fearless. Together, they began to unlock the shard's secrets, translating its energy into a weapon that could rewrite physics on a galactic scale. But time was running out. The Ascendants were regrouping, and their next target wouldn't be a lone scientist. It would be everything. The weapon was ready. Alara called it the Chaos Engine. a device that could destabilize the very fabric of spacetime. It was crude, dangerous, and untested. It'll either save us or unravel everything, Alaris said, her hands steady as she made final adjustments. Eris stood beside her, the data shard clutched in his hand. Its energy pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Then let's hope it unravels the right things. They loaded the engine onto the Wanderer, the ship now repaired but scarred. Their destination was the Ascendant's staging ground, a nebula where their biomechanical ships were massing for a final assault. As they approached, the nebula's colors shifted from vibrant blues and purples to a sickly green. The Ascendants were already there, their ships forming a perfect, geometric pattern. "They're waiting for us," Alaris said, her voice tight. Eris smiled. Good. He engaged the Chaos engine, and the universe outside the Wanderer's viewport began to warp. Stars elongated into streaks of light, and the nebula's colors bled into one another. The Ascendant's ships shuddered, their systems flickering. They tried to fire, but their weapons misfired, striking each other. Eris pushed the engine to its limits, the ship groaning under the strain. "How long can you hold it?" Alara asked, her knuckles white on the console. "As long as it takes," Eris replied. The Chaos engine's energy surged, and the nebula itself seemed to scream. The Ascendant's ships began to dissolve, their biomechanical forms unraveling into chaos. But the backlash was immediate. The Wanderer shook violently, alarms blaring. The engine was overloading. "We have to go, Eris," Alara yelled. Eris didn't hesitate. He ejected the engine, sending it hurtling into the heart of the nebula. The resulting explosion was blinding, a wave of chaotic energy that consumed everything. The Wanderer was thrown clear, its engines dead. They'd done it. The Ascendants were gone. But at what cost? The Wanderer drifted in the silence of space, its systems offline. Eris and Alara floated in the cockpit, the only sound the hum of life support. The Chaos engine had worked, but it had nearly taken them with it. "We won," Alara said, her voice hollow. "But at what cost?" Eris looked out at the nebula, now a swirling vortex of chaos. The cost was worth it. They were rescued days later by a passing freighter, their story spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. The Ascendants were defeated, but the universe had changed. The laws of physics were no longer absolute. Chaos was now a part of reality, and with it, infinite possibilities. Eris and Alara became symbols of resistance, their names whispered in hushed tones across star systems. They'd rewritten the rules, but the fight wasn't over. The Ascendants were gone, but other threats remained. And Eris knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its courage. It was its unpredictability. As he stood on the bridge of a new ship, funded by the grateful galaxy, he looked to the stars. The universe was no longer a cage. It was a canvas. And humanity, for the first time, was free to paint its own future. Years passed. Eris Thorn became a legend, his name synonymous with rebellion and innovation. The Galactic Archive was rebuilt, this time with a wing dedicated to the study of chaos, a testament to his legacy. Alara Voss continued her research, her theories now accepted as truth. But peace was fragile. New threats emerged, drawn by the chaos Eris had unleashed. One such threat was the Voidborn, entities of pure antimatter that fed on order. They were relentless, their ships silent and deadly. Eris knew they couldn't be defeated with weapons. They had to be outsmarted. He gathered a crew of the galaxy's most unpredictable minds, a rogue AI, a telepathic squid, and a thief who could walk through walls. Together, they devised a plan to use the Voidborn's own obsession with order against them. They infiltrated a Voidborn hive, planting a device that would amplify chaos, turning their orderly minds to madness. The plan worked, but at a terrible cost. Eris was left behind, his body consumed by the Voidborn's energy. As he dissolved, he smiled. His legacy wasn't his survival. It was the chaos he'd unleashed. The galaxy would never be the same. Alara Voss stood at the edge of the galaxy, looking out at the swirling chaos that now defined reality. Eris was gone, but his work lived on. The Voidborn were defeated, but new challenges awaited. She pulled out a data shard, one of the last fragments of the original one Eris had found. Its energy pulsed in her hand, a reminder of the truth he'd uncovered. The universe wasn't meant to be controlled. It was meant to be wild. And humanity, for all its flaws, was the wildest of all. Alara smiled, a fierce, defiant expression. The Ascendants were gone. The Voidborn were gone. But the fight for freedom was just beginning. And she would be ready.